Hey everybody, Alan Butler with Butler Contracting, and today we're here with Cassie Barrientos with Truest Insurance Group, and we just want to talk to you a little bit about insurance, and specifically talking about insurance you should be looking for when you're looking to hire a contractor. Well, today just kind of like we talked about earlier, just kind of talking about how we can help homeowners understand when they're looking to get a project or a home improvement project done at their home, maybe some of the things they should be looking for when they're looking to hire a contractor. In particular, whether or not that contractor is insured, and maybe some of the risks the homeowner has if they are not hiring a contractor that has insurance, and different levels of endorsements and types of work that they might actually be covered for, or things they may not be covered for.
Yeah, so the good thing is there's two different sides, right? So you have your commercial insurance, which is could be your contractors or whoever you're using, and then you have homeowners on the other side. So we'll start with contractors first because that's a really quick one. So with contractors, they need to have a general liability insurance, right? And this general liability covers for the jobs that they are doing, as well as if anybody is hurt on that job or in particular. And that is going to be something that you can check on and making sure they actually have it. If they do not have that, it's not a good idea to do a lot of business with them because they aren't they are not covered. So it will basically fall back on you, or it'll fall back on them and their personal side, and that's always a little bit of a wishy-washy thing. What you can do is you can look up a COI and ask them for it.
What's a COI?
A COI is going to be a certificate of liability insurance. So it's a paper that looks like this. Up here, it'll have their information. It'll have actually their insurance information. Right here will be all of the different people that they actually are insured through. And then you'll have different sections like general liability, automobile liability, umbrella, workers' comp, and then a section for anything else like equipment or anything else that you might want to put in there. It'll have descriptions of everything. It'll have their actual policy number, their effective date. It'll have their expiration date, and then their limits. What you can do is you can always call up to their insurance group and actually see that this is actually valid. It's in use, because they could also just not pay it and just have this paper from time to time and be able to just change the numbers. Unfortunately, there are people out there that do that, and that's never a fun thing.
Pay for a month and get it free the rest of the year, and Mrs. Jones, here's the paperwork, we're insured, but in fact they actually don't have an active insurance policy.
Correct.
And they're working on your home and your property, and they're actually not insured, but they told you they were. So it's always a great idea to call the agent.
Correct. The agent can't tell you anything particular about their actual policy, but they can tell you that there is in force or it is an active policy. Okay. So it's always best just to do that. Down here it'll say certificate holder. So a lot of times if you ask for a COI, they'll actually have to put in there your information. So that way you actually know that that's there. And then on the homeowner side of things, you want to make sure not only do they have that, but the reason why is because if they don't have that, then that could actually fall back on you. A little bit more things, obviously, Butler Contracting, you're in fencing. But if all of a sudden you are up there and you're fixing something, you're painting, right? And you're on this tall ladder and you fall off, that actually would not technically be covered under you because you're not covered for that. It would actually fall back on the homeowner because that is something that's happening on their property that is not covered. Now, of course, at that point, insurance companies might go after insurance companies, and that has nothing to really do with you guys, but just know that that's not covered on Butler Contracting side, and it's just going to be covered on the homeowner side. So that means that they can come and sue you for everything that you have outside of your homestead, and that can always be a problem.
So you're talking like endorsements, right? So we do fencing and outdoor living spaces, and with that we have kind of all these different tasks that we operate to build those things. So like you mentioned, painting, for example. So we do a lot of staining of fences. We paint outdoor living spaces, so we are insured for that particular component, but it is an endorsement we carry on the policy.
Correct.
Right.
So it would be a general contractor, will be kind of what they say you are in general, right? As a general contractor. And then they'll have different endorsements and different activities that you do, whether it is the painting, whether it's, let's say it's doing plumbing or doing other things that might involve what you're doing. So whenever, on commercial side, whenever you come in, your insurance agent should be asking you all those different things of what you're doing, how much you're bringing, are you actually installing this, are you installing that, because that is going to be something that you will make sure that needs to be on your policy.
Sure.
That is something that should be on the COI as well, underneath the description. It should have that on there saying that this is what this is for. Sometimes if you have multiples, like a general contractor might have 10 to 15 different items, it might not necessarily be on that specifically, but what you do is that's why it's, hey, what is this specifically for? Okay, they're going to do painting, they're going to do fencing, they're going to do some welding. So let's go ahead and make sure that all three of those are on this certificate when you give it over to that homeowner.
Absolutely.
So that homeowner should be looking for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we just want to kind of educate that if someone's coming out to your property to do work as a contractor, making sure they're actually insured for the type of activities they're going to be performing on the job site or at the home, so that way they're covered. And then you mentioned an important part in there as well about workers' compensation. Could you kind of talk about that a little bit and how that works in Texas? Because I know there's some nuances there and some things that homeowners may or may not be aware of.
Yeah, so workers' comp, it's actually, Texas is an at-will state with that. So you are not required to have it, but it is very smart that companies do have it. The reason being is because if they are hurt on the job, if they have workers' comp, then it's covered through that. If they don't, then what could happen is, say a butler contracting, they don't have workers' comp, and one of their workers was hurt on the job. What they'll do is that insurance will now say, well, what happened exactly? What did this happen? What happened here? And what they'll try to do is try to get the homeowner's insurance to take it over and to do that. So you have different ways of really getting yourself in pickles if you do not make sure that your contractors or you as a homeowner have specific things in place. And as a homeowner, it's real simple to just say, hey, can you get me a COI for this job, please? Make sure everything's on there. I'm going to go ahead and call up and just make sure that you have your policies in place. And usually, if someone balks at that and they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, of course I can get that for you, of course," and they get it for you, that's like, okay, maybe I need to do something. Or if you guys, which I know you guys do it specifically, you're like, hey, let me go ahead and actually give you this certificate. You actually say, hey, let me do this first. That's always like a green light, like, oh gosh, this is someone that knows what they're doing. They actually are protecting themselves and they're protecting me as a homeowner. And so that's something that you want to make sure you look for. Workers' comp can also really help in cases of if there's a dog bite, right? So a dog bite helps in that too. So it could go back and forth between regular homeowners as well as your businesses. And that will be something that you don't have to deal with, but you definitely want to make sure that you have that. So workers' comp is a big thing. It's actually not that expensive for a business to be able to have it on there. And it's very well worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Butler Contract, and we carry workers' comp for all of our employees. And I'm kind of talking about as well, could you elaborate a little bit on if someone hires a general contractor, for example, and maybe there's a component or an aspect of a project that's subbed out, how does that work out?
Yeah, so if it's subbed out, then you want to make sure that as a contractor and as the owner of the business, that you're actually having those subs have their COIs and you're checking on those as well. What you can do as well is provide those to the homeowner as well, because they want to make sure, hey, if they're coming in and they're touching all of this plumbing and they're doing everything, like they need to be covered. Plumbing is a big deal. What if there was a leak inside of it and that leak ended up ruining your floor and you're having to replace your whole floor? That's actually going to come back on the general contractor, but as well as the plumber. And if that plumber doesn't have any insurance, well, like what's happening now? COIs are a very big thing. Again, a COI is a certificate of liability insurance. Those are very big things to get from any worker that's working on your house, whether it is a general contractor or it is a painter or it is somebody else. Because if they end up ruining something in your nice new house or in your house that you're trying to remodel or anything like that, you could be in a lot of trouble and have to pay a lot of out of money out of pocket, and that would just not be fun because you're already paying a lot of money out of pocket to remodel or to get a brand new house.
Yeah, it's amazing the folks in the community that come to our office, and they might be doing the kind of work that we do, and they want to work with us or be a subcontractor, and first question we ask is for a certificate of insurance. And it's amazing the amount of them to just get their eyes wide open. They have no idea what we're talking about. They don't know what a COI is, and they're running around in our community and they're doing work for people. And I'm like, well, how have you made it this far without being insured? And no one's addressed this with you. So good points and good information. So just something to think about when you're getting someone out to your house to do a project. Make sure they're insured. It's very important.
Yes.
The liability insurance with the workers' compensation. Very valid points. So if someone was to get hurt on the job site, that may go back to their homeowner's insurance versus workers' comp. If that's not covered by the contractor, now you're on the hook for Billy who's out there. And if Billy wasn't an actual employee and he was a subcontractor, that subcontractor that's the third party may be coming after your insurance company or you personally from a legal lawsuit if they were to get hurt. So
correct.
These are the kinds of things we like to let folks know that, while we might seem like we're a little bit more investment up front, we're definitely doing more and you're getting more value working with us.
Yeah, and some people might think, what do you mean? Like if that happens, why would they can't come after me? That wasn't my fault. Well, unfortunately, no one likes insurance unless you actually need it. But insurance is there because the insurance companies can go after the other insurance companies. So whether you might know it or not, that's happening behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden you have a claim put up and you're like, I mean, this is ridiculous, But at the same time, that's why someone like Butler Contracting, they make sure they have all of their ducks in a row. They have all of that. They make sure everything's there. If you have somebody that's just off of Nextdoor, social media, or something like that, and they might just be someone that does things on the side, you still want to make sure that they have it. And for those businesses that might not have general liability actually isn't all that expensive when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, to be able to protect yourself and to protect your clients and everything else. So
another point I wanted to hit as well is vehicle insurance. Can you kind of talk about commercial vehicle insurance and maybe if there's property damage on the property with that commercial vehicle or equipment and some of that and how that works, so that way customers are aware? Maybe someone backs into a garage door or, weird things happen. Yeah.
So there is a very big difference between commercial auto insurance and personal auto insurance. So commercial auto insurance is very important for those that actually have commercial vehicles that they're using. And the reason being is because, example that you just gave, if they back into the garage door and ruin the garage door, that is now under the commercial policy, and so they will need to fix that under there. If you had a personal vehicle and you did that, it will now be under the personal side, and the personal will not cover your commercial things if you're doing it as a job. If you're using your personal vehicle for work related things, that will not be covered. And you might think, oh gosh, but commercial is so much more expensive. Well, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that expensive if you actually have a claim and it needs to be covered. Or if you're like, I'll take the risk, I'll just do it. Well, when that happens, they'll actually probably drop you, and then you won't have insurance at all for anything. And then it becomes a lot more expensive because now you've been dropped.
The contractor, right?
Correct.
Not
the contractor. Right? Yes, I'm sorry, the contractor.
Just want to verify.
Yes, this is not for the actual homeowners. This is for the contractor. And so making sure that on that certificate of liability that you see the automobile liability, that they actually have commercial liability insurance for their automobiles, like Butler Contracting, where you have a vehicle that has your information on it. You have all of that, right? If they're coming in and they have all of this stuff and they have different tools on there, you want to make sure that that's covered, because that could be a really big problem. So
absolutely, yeah. So there's a lot of folks out there running around in the community that are maybe doing handyman work, or they're a contractor of some kind doing home improvements around the community, and they're showing up in their personal truck to do work, and it probably has their personal liability insurance, or maybe they have full coverage. But like you said, if they damage property in the act of performing commercial activities, hired out work, it's probably not going to get covered, is what you're saying.
Correct. So there's a very big possibility that it will not be covered at all.
So that may end up in a kind of a civil litigation situation at that point where, Billy damaged my stone on my house when he backed into the corner of my house, and Billy's not a rock mason, so he just drove off and the insurance won't cover it. So now you got to, as a homeowner, deal with that whole situation and get it fixed, pay out of pocket, and then go through the legal process.
Yeah, and Billy might come back and say, what are you talking about? I didn't hit your house. I didn't have that. How do you know that wasn't there before? Like, I think I saw it kind of messed up. And then now everybody's going back and forth. And especially if he doesn't have commercial insurance, Billy's going to really try to make sure that he doesn't get anything on there, because that would really stink. So, you always want to make sure people are covered, especially when they're coming onto your property or working on anything that has anything to do with your home and what you consider yours.
Fantastic. So I just kind of hit on the main points. So looking for hiring a contractor that actually has insurance. You can check with their insurance company, call the number on their certificate of insurance. We call it a COI in the industry. And check with that particular agent that company or that contractor has insured with to make sure, A, they have an active policy.
Correct.
And B, they're actually covered for the type of activities or work they're performing on the property.
Yes.
And then C, making sure that they're having they have an active commercial vehicle policy. Yes. So that way in the event something happens with vehicle damage on the property, because that's separate.
Those are two separate, separate entities. Yep.
Absolutely. And then workers' compensation is the other important part. If someone gets hurt on the job, whether it's an employee or a subcontractor that's over there doing work, because again, you may have not hired the third-party person on the job site. And then making sure that if you have any questions, you call that insurance agent, or you can always maybe reach out to Cassie here at Truest Insurance. And if you have any questions on your personal home or auto or property insurance, or if you have a business looking for commercial insurance
as well,
Cassie can help you out and navigate some things with you on questions there. So really appreciate you having us today. And
thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Yep. If you have any questions or need anything, don't hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely. How would people get in hold of you?
They can call 512-321-9524. Again, that's 512-321-9524. I'm at extension 2. Or you can email truestinsurancegroup@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, I'm Alan Butler with Butler Contracting. We hope you learned something today on this video, and we hope to see you on your next project.
Bye.